my name, I'm in one of those little boxes, I think, at the side of the screen. But my name is Darling, and I'm in a very fortunate position. I'm in the British Computer Society, yippee, as are my colleagues this evening. And the British Computer Society is somewhere between 60 and 70,000 people strong. And in terms of what kind of organization it is, well, I'm sure you know, but it's a membership, it's a certifications organization, publications, an agitator at government level and across governments. It's a brilliant organization to be part of. So please do come and be part of it. I'm in the very lucky position of being the chair or lead of 3 groups in the BCS, which all sounds marvelous until you hear that the BCS has over 100 groups. So when you join, there's any number of possibilities that you can partake in, all relating to the world of IT. Now, we've got a series of initiatives in the BCS London branches, which are the groups that I'm associated with. London North, Central, and South are the groups. Now, in those groups, we have something called initiatives. We have initiatives on AI, on data. We have initiatives on quantum and various other things. But we have an especially brilliant initiative to do with women. It's entitled Wominspiration, inspiring women with inspiration for everyone. Now, Joe, who is our interviewer for this session today, is an experienced interviewer for inspiration. And we really do meet the motto, as it were, inspiring women with inspiration for everyone, because she has a wonderful lady to interview called Nicola. But let me hand over at this point and say, Joe, please tell us a little bit about yourself and a whole lot about Nicola, and go for it with this Wominspiration. Over to you, Joe.
Oh, thank you, Darren. It's wonderful to be here, and welcome to this Wominspiration, everyone. It's great to see you all. So a little bit about me before I move on and introduce Nicola, and we hear all about Nicola. So I am founder and director of a social enterprise called Inclusioneering. My work's all about helping tech and engineering firms to be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive, and that includes kind of inclusion in their innovation processes and how they adopt AI as well. So quite a techie view on inclusion, you may say, reflective of my background, having worked in tech for a good 20 years before I started doing this. So I'm also co-chair of BCSWomen, where I'm a committee member, colleague of Nicola's, and a council elected member of the BCS Trustee Board. So you'll see more of me during the year, and Nicola will be behind the scenes during the year as well. So you may well see more of Nicola as well. And we'll look forward to welcoming you to future Wominspirations as the year goes on. A little bit of admin before we move on to the main event, just to say, ask your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll come to questions at the end. So jot in your questions as you think of them, and we'll make sure that everything that we can get to we'll answer as we're finishing. But now on to the main event. And what better way to kick off this year's Wominspiration series than introducing you to Nicola Martin, who really is truly an inspirational, amazing woman, and a pleasure to be working with her on BCSWomen, and consider her a great friend of mine as well. So Nicola is a prolific volunteer. She's chair of SIGiST, the special interest group for software testing. As I've mentioned, she's also a BCSWomen committee member, and she's also a member of BCS Council. So Nicola, welcome. It's really wonderful to have you here.
Hello. Oh, what a lovely intro. Thank you. I consider you a friend as well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Good
that. So, Nicola, would you kick us off and tell us a bit about who is Nicola in your own words? How do you describe yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm a mum to a 7-year-old who is in another room on a laptop at the moment. So he won't interrupt us, but if he does, I'm just telling you in advance. But that's my first job, I guess. But during the day, I work in the AI and data science industry. I'm head of quality for a company working in that space. And as Joe's mentioned, I volunteer a lot. I probably started in volunteering about 5 years ago properly. I've volunteered prior to that, but never as seriously as I do now. But I've been in tech for over 20 years. And yeah, I think this is probably my 24th year this year. And
Wow.
yeah, I've worked in different areas, but mostly around quality and software testing. Been a business analyst for a while as well as a project manager. But quality is my area of expertise, and I also get involved with delivery as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Nicola. I'd probably better warn everyone as well. Also a parent with kids at home who may well come storming in. I have bribed them heavily with chocolate and Fortnite. So reserve the judgment on the parenting technique, but I'm pretty confident it's going to work. Hopefully we don't see them during the event, but if we do, please forgive me. So Nicola, tell me, I'm sure people are curious to know much more about your work in testing and quality. Can you tell us a bit more about what are some of the big challenges that you're working on?
Well, at the moment, I work for a quite small organization, and we're working in the AI space, so obviously there are the issues that you'll be hearing about in terms of we're working with LLMs, that kind of thing. And so it's about, as a quality team, being able to support the work that happens within the organization. As I've been working in the current company for about 4.5 years, I probably have a head start compared to a lot of people who are now coming into projects that require some knowledge around data science, for example, and machine learning, which I've had a little bit of a head start, but now people are coming into it, and I often get questions from people on LinkedIn, for example, begging me to help them with test strategy, or just, what do we do? How do we handle this? So, as an area of tech, quality is, seeing huge changes at the moment, and it's about being able to, grow and change with that.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that machine learning really has changed what you do in your work with testing. Can you say a bit more about the kind of changes that you've had to make to be able to test?
Just around processes, for example, and the skills that people need to have. I mean, we're not asking for people to be, full developers or anything like that. We obviously acknowledge that there's a difference in skill set. So you'll find that a lot of testers are probably moving more towards a skill set of SDET, software developer in test, or more platform related skills as well, to help support the work that they're doing, and just to give them a deeper technical knowledge. I myself, my skill set is probably more geared towards data, so that and data analysis, and that helps a lot as well within this space.
I mean, the data is the crucial element, isn't it, behind all of those models, and being able to make sense of the patterns in the data and some of the outcomes from that. I know one of the things that you talk about a lot is AI bias. I'm wondering, does that interact with your data expertise? Can you say anything?
I mean, yeah, for me, it's an interest because, well, people on the call probably don't know, but I also volunteer for UN Women UK. And last year I was a delegate on the Commission for the Status of Women, their 67th meeting last year. I was a volunteer, and the key area that they were looking at was equality for tech. And one of the conversations that was happening was about AI, and how we needed to make it a more equal space for women and girls around the world. And we looked at things like data literacy, for example, and there are lots of groups now that have spun off from that are looking at those areas in particular, looking at how do we give people a voice, and how do we give people choice. And one of the groups I'm working with is actually around choices, and we're building up, or potentially going to be building up, data literacy tools that the public can use to learn about how their data is being used. So it's an intersection for me with quality, and so I talk about bias in terms of the impact socially on society. And I've presented at the Royal Academy of Engineering and other organisations as well, other different events. We Are the City and Women Tech Network Global and lots of other ones. I haven't done it for BCS yet. Maybe I should do it for them as well.
I think there's another event coming up soon.
Another one. Yeah.
About that. So you didn't start out in tech, did you, Nicola? Can you tell us about your career? Where did it?
No, I didn't. No, I actually was a conference organizer before I got into tech. It's insane, right? But in the days when I know I look young, but I'm actually really old. When I was younger and working, I started working at 18, and I walked into an agency on a Friday and walked in to work on the Monday morning and ended up working for the Confederation of British Industry and organizing conferences. And we'd meet heads of state and, lots of MPs. And I'd met some really, big people by the time I was about 20. So, it gave me a lot of confidence where I'd lacked it before. And, beyond that, I worked in marketing for a little bit and then into tech. So, and I fell into that by accident as well. Walked out of a job on a Friday into one on a Monday. Not much of an interview process, but, I ended up in a really great team who really, ignited my interest in tech. And it was very different, back in the late 90s, early noughties, but that's when I got into it and never looked back.
Well, what an amazing start, and such a big apparent difference from working in an event organization with MPs and world leaders by the sounds of it. Have you got any interesting stories you can share about them?
I said hello to Nelson Mandela once.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
He said, "What do you do?" Conferences. That's one thing. And I've met lots of other people as well. It was just really great memories from that time.
Yeah, how amazing to meet Nelson Mandela. I'm sure that's something that you will carry with you. I mean, wow.
I probably would tell the grandkids, but it's not much of a story to tell them. Asked me what I did and I said hello.
Saying hello is definitely a big deal if you ask me. So are there any skills and kind of experience that you think that you brought with you from your previous career into your tech career?
Just being able to organize. That was a key thing. And when I was working in my first tech role, it was for a team that was building software for internal teams. And I was actually being mentored by a systems analyst who said to me I had a very analytical mindset, that they were his words, and I should consider working in this area. But I had no idea how you got into it. And he explained a few different roles to me. And I said, well, what experience do you need for that? And what qualifications do you need for that? So at the time, I think I did the ICEP.
What's the ICEP for people who don't know?
Well, it's the now you have in software testing, there's ISTQB, which is a board that certifies the foundation certificate in software testing. At the time, it was the board was ICEP. And I did that exam and I just felt like, okay, I've got this qualification. I feel a bit more professional. And, my next job I applied for was as a software tester. And it just went from there and I've never looked back. And I was still in permanent work then. But after that, I decided that I would go contracting. So I did a couple of permanent roles, ended up as a team lead, and then went contracting, and I've worked on some fairly high profile projects over the years.
Well, I mean, that's an amazing transition, and one that, sounds very serendipitous, if I'm able to actually get that word out, just having somebody who recognizes that the skills you've got actually apply really well into that, into that new direction that you took with it.
Yeah. But
actually kind of making up to team lead and then, some of the kind of big roles that you've worked on since, I think really shows, an awful lot of kind of aptitude and expertise that you've developed. Can you say anything about how you actually made that kind of progress in your career? Because I know lots of people, wonder how do people make it? What do you do to actually demonstrate that you've got the skills to make that kind of progress?
I think within the first roles I had, I was just a workaholic. I really was. I probably just got married. I think then I'm not married anymore. But I think I just got married. I was young and happy and just wanted to, work really hard. And I enjoyed the job. It was one of the first jobs I'd had where I really enjoyed doing what I was doing. I love the way that it made my brain work really hard at thinking about how to test things, and thinking outside of the box about different ways to approach it. It wasn't agile environments then, so you had much longer to test things, and you could actually apply lots of process to it. So you could really think about how you were going to do the work and then do it properly. And beyond the first couple of roles, when I went into contracting, I did every role going. I would be test manager, or I would just be a general tester, but I was getting paid quite a good day rate. So it didn't really matter to me at the time about the position I was doing, so long as the project was really good. So I got to work on PlayStation 2 and all a lot of the games that supported that for a while, and that was really brilliant. I loved that. I got to work in broadcast media for a while, and I worked for Sky and Disney for a little while as well. And yeah, I mean, I've worked in lots of companies that I was interested in seeing how they worked as a whole team, and I learned lots from being in different spaces. And then I went into civil aviation for a couple of years and worked for Civil Aviation Authority, which was very different again. But I got to be their UK test manager and worked with a small team, but it was a really, really busy team, and I stayed there for a while. And I found a lot of my later contracts were quite a long time. And a lot of the time people would say to me, "Oh, we didn't realize you weren't permanent. We thought you were, a permanent member of staff," because I'd integrate into the team so well, and I got really good at that kind of skill set. New project, probably didn't have any documentation or anything, but being able to interview people and find out what was needed, and being able to just integrate into teams seamlessly, and people forgot I was only temporary because I was there for so long. Or sometimes I might end up doing 2 roles within a job. So I might be a BA and then do testing. So that's happened a couple of times as well.
Gosh, I mean, it sounds like a lot of kind of quick thinking and, being able to adapt very quickly to new situations. What kind of skills do you think you've developed that you could kind of give others advice about? How do you develop that kind of?
Again, it's the kind of consultancy type skills. So being able to, adapt to change really quickly, that's important. And now that more companies are doing agile, using agile as their process, that's really important that you can handle change. And that was a big part of my time contracting. I would go into very different environments, maybe every 6 months or every 3 months or every couple of years. And it was about handling that change. So lots of soft skills. The technical skills are great, but the soft skills were really important. Being able to communicate properly with people at all different levels, that was really important as well.
So Nicola, let's move on to some of your kind of personal life alongside, some of your career progress. It certainly hasn't been plain sailing, and you've had some really tough times actually that you've managed to come through. So a trigger warning for people listening: if you will be challenged by some stories of bereavement, I will put a message in the chat when we finish this section of the conversation. But Nicola, can you tell us a little bit about what happened and how you came through that, and some of the I guess some of the changes that it's led you to since
then? So my partner, at the time, he basically was told that he had leukemia. We hadn't been going out for a long time, I think maybe about 9 months, and I had a contract, and I was really into this job, and I suddenly found out that he had cancer, and I had to give up work for a year to help look after him. And then, long story short, without going through all the terrible things that happened during it, he did actually get better for a while. But, you know, and that enabled me to go back to work for a little while, and we almost tried to be normal, and life carried on. In fact, we were living like it was the best thing ever. And I ended up having our little boy, and we just thought everything was going to be okay, but he got sick again just as I was about to give birth, actually. So I have pictures here of the day I gave birth, and he's got his bald head. He's just had chemo a month before. You know, it was a very stressful time when I should have been really enjoying being a new mother. And during that time, because I was the only breadwinner, if you like, I ended up having to go back to work at 9 weeks when I should have been enjoying time with my little boy and, you know, our baby. I had to go back to work. So a lot of the time I was working full time in another tech role, you know, working full time during the day. My little boy was in nursery, and I would come home and look after my partner. And it was really stressful. I don't know to this day how I made it through. I still look back on it and I'm amazed at my resilience, because I just think I was working on autopilot for a while. And then come late 2018, we knew that he was getting more sick. And very early in 2019, things went a bit wrong, and due to some complications. And he actually passed away in February 2019. And at that point, I could have crumbled and, you know, just reverted back to just going back into my shell and just giving up on everything. But somehow his passing actually made me want to do a lot. I just, you know, it was almost like I had to do more because he wasn't able to do anything. So I needed to be doing lots to show that I was, you know, living, if you like, and doing it for him as well as for Rufus, my son. And I just wanted to do more. And after a little bit of counselling, and I actually had to go back to work because I was in test consultancy at the time. I ended up having to travel for work still, even after everything happened, and leaving my son with grandparents and things while I was away. And then I decided I had to be working in London, and needed to give him a stable base. And I did that. But everything after, in the year or so after, everything was about me doing more to show that he couldn't live, but I could, for both of us and for my little boy. And that's when I started volunteering with the BCS at that point.
Wow, gosh, that's such an incredibly moving story, Nicola. I'm so sorry for your loss. And, you know, I have no words. There's nothing I can say.
I've spoken about it quite a lot. So if you don't see me crying, it's because I've done that a million times. And I'm at a point where I'm able to speak about it but it's in a positive way, because he really helped me to see that I could do lots of things. And I wish he was here now. But, you know, it's not to be. And, you know, look, I can see people putting hearts up. That's so sweet. Thank you. But, you know, I push forward, and, you know, life is good. We're fine. And my little boy is actually really resilient as well, because surprisingly, he got to know his dad. So, you know, and he remembers him. So,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And he's amazing, fantastic, and he knows how hard I work. He's used to me. Like now I say he's in his bedroom on the laptop because he's happy that I'm letting him use the laptop tonight. But you know, we've been through lots, but we've come through. And, you know, I wouldn't say, I don't like to use it like the strong Black woman thing, but I do know I'm more resilient, and I am very different to the person I was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly say that you're a very strong woman. And your resilience is, you know, I think part of what makes you such an inspiration. You know,
and you've actually known me since the year he died.
I have, and I didn't realize when
you didn't know that.
At all what you were going.
I didn't tell anyone when I first started, because I didn't want anyone to tell me, you can't do this, you're not allowed to do this. you should focus on you. That was me focusing on me, giving myself lots of things to do, but also giving back. So before BCS, I actually volunteered with a bereavement charity called Widowed and Young. And I helped them for a little bit on a project. And that was my first big taste of volunteering. And I thought, I love doing this for groups and I can help people. And I've actually got years of experience and I can give something back.
And that's wonderful to bring, you know, such energy and focus to channel, you know, yourself into voluntary work to help other people. Would you tell us a bit more about some of the volunteering that you do now?
Well, since I've been at the BCS, I feel like I've been through every team. If you know me from any other teams, well, obviously from SIGiST. So I've been with the special interest group in software testing since 2019, as well as BCSWomen, and I've been inclusion officer for both groups. But I've also been vice chair for SIGiST, and I'm now chair of SIGiST. And yeah, I feel like they're all my friends. I love them to pieces. And I really love everybody on BCSWomen as well. And we all work really hard on different events and things. I've also been a part of BCS Pride. And for a little bit before it started properly, I was in BCS Embrace as well. So yeah, lots of different groups, plus council. Yeah, and I'm on the nominations committee as well. So yeah, there's lots and lots of BCS stuff, but I've done stuff outside as well. So I've worked with Women Tech Network Global, Women Tech UK, and I've helped Coding Black Females a little bit, but obviously through our connection in BCS as well. And yeah, I've worked for a few other organizations, but now I volunteer also with UN Women UK on one of their AI projects from last year. So it will start to kick off, but it's going to be quite a long project, and I've just applied for some specific roles around DE&I. So hopefully I'll get it.
Well, good luck, and that's amazing. I mean, I think my introduction of calling you a prolific volunteer doesn't really begin to cover it, hearing all of those things.
It's almost, I need to get a balance because I think it might take over my daytime hours as well soon if I don't. So yeah, I need to find the balance there.
Yeah. And what would you say? Have you got a main motivation in your volunteering? Is there some things that you're really trying to achieve? Can you tell us more?
I think the things around equality are really important to me. So it really is fantastic when I find projects or groups that I can work with that are in this, you know, trying to do the same things. And if it's around AI or quality, I'm obviously going to go with it because there's an intersection there. And yeah, that just seems to be everything at the moment that I'm involved in. And obviously working with BCSWomen, we get to work on really interesting things as well. Tech Up boot camp's coming, and I've got a talk in April. And I give other talks outside as well, lots of other talks. I seem to be doing one all the time at the moment. But yeah, I do loads. I just, if they come up, I got into a habit of not saying no. I'm trying to now. I am trying to learn that I have to say no sometimes, otherwise it's overwhelming. Last year became very overwhelming, but I scaled it back quite a bit this year.
Yeah, well, it's kind of reassuring in a way to hear you say that, because I mean, all of the things you do sounds overwhelming, right? It seems like an awful lot. So kind of good to hear actually that saying no is also important, and just doing
part of my mantra this year, I am saying no where I need to. There are things that are really interesting and I'll say yes straight away, but you know, where I can, I am trying to say no, and you know, mental health is important as well. So
it is. Are there any things that you do to look after your mental health that you could share, Nicola?
Take time out when I need to. There was a point last year where I was working 7 days a week on stuff. And I just thought that's just too much, and I wasn't spending enough time with my little boy, and I needed to do that. So I've pulled back on things like after school club so that I can spend more time with him. And you know, just being able to make sure I plan properly and ahead, and I know when it's going to be a busy time. Like March is crazy, April is a bit crazy, and then it calms down for a little bit before it kicks off again. But yeah, I mean, just being able to say no to things and actually not feel guilty for doing it, that's really important. And it just allows me to take some time out when I need to. And you'll see me go completely silent for a while, and I don't post on LinkedIn for weeks and weeks. That's when you know I'm taking time for myself.
I definitely do that too. It's all gets a bit much. The first things that goes at social media. So how do you manage to keep your time controlled though with all of these things you mentioned about, you know, very careful planning around it? Do you allocate?
So normally when I start to work with a group, I will ask, the first thing I'll ask is, how many hours do you expect from me every week? And if they say more than 10, I'm not doing it. Obviously, I won't do it. But if they were to say to me maybe an hour a week or an hour a month, I can do it. So that actually, it might sometimes sound like I'm doing lots, but sometimes I don't need to work on something for a month. And in another month, I might need to give it 5 hours. Or, you know, it just depends on what's planned, what I'll be working on with them. And I try to plan out as early as possible what that would look like, and then move the pieces around. Nothing gets into my work day, but outside that, as long as it's nothing, you know, my son needs to go to clubs and things, I make sure that that all happens, and giving as much of my time as I can. And then, you know, anything else, I'm happy to donate it to, you know, a group. So, and I do.
That was wonderful. And how do you find the energy to keep it all up? Where do you think you get your energy from?
I think it's because I have to run around after a 7-year-old. I think that's where I get it from. Some days I think to myself, when I do take time out, it's almost like, and relax. And I feel like, oh my goodness, I've been running like a crazy person for weeks, and you know, I just want to sleep a lot and things. But I do get a good night's sleep now. In the old days, I used to sleep about 3 hours a night, but now I get a proper night's sleep.
Oh, glad to hear.
And that's how I was able to do everything, because I used to say I'll sleep when I'm dead, which was a really bad thing, because when I worked at its peak in contract, when I was a contractor, I worked for a bank. I won't name them, but I was with them for a long time, and I didn't have a child at the time. It wasn't unusual for me to still be at work at 11 o'clock at night.
Oh gosh.
And there were lots of stories about people becoming very ill or other things happening with people in different banks. And it almost became like a, you know, oh, it's an urban myth that happened, but it wasn't at all. It was real. And you'd hear about people having breakdowns and things, all because they were working the hours they were working. And there's one night in particular, I was working really late, and Starbucks downstairs was still open until after midnight. And I collapsed at the counter. And
you actually physically collapsed?
I physically collapsed at the counter, and there was no one else in the office with me. I don't understand to this day why I felt I needed to work so hard for a contract role that was paying me a day rate. They stopped paying me after 8 hours, and I was still there at nearly midnight, you know, and I had to get myself out of that. And yeah, once I've done that, and that happened after my father died in 2013. After that, my whole mentality towards working shifted, and I prioritized me. And I think that was the shift that made that happen. So it seems like whenever somebody passes away or something, it has a big effect on me. Really important people pass away. Yeah, and it just complete shift and in my mindset about working, and I stopped doing any of that.
I'm glad to hear that you did stop that. I mean, that sounds like a very unsustainable, unhealthy, stressful.
Unfortunately, there were a lot of people in finance doing stuff like that. It was not unusual at all, but it was not healthy at all.
So kind of reflecting on your huge range of tech roles and volunteer roles, you know, across your journey, is there anything that's really surprised you along the way through it all?
No, I think, but now I think no.
You've just
No,
seen
I
it all.
no. No, I think when I look back now and I realize the teams I used to work in, the structure of teams were very different. I would work in teams of just all men and be the one woman in that team and think it was okay. Never feel like, oh my goodness, this is weird, I don't want to come and work here. I would just be like this, okay, just pay me my day rate at the end of the day. And I had that kind of attitude. But now I look back and I think that's awful that I was working in teams like that consistently, job after job. And it highlighted the problems. But I only really learned about the numbers of women in tech when I started volunteering with BCS Women.
Yeah.
Before that, I wasn't really even aware of the situation. I just thought I'd just been, unlucky enough to always be in teams with lots of men, but actually that was normal.
Yeah, it's funny. I really relate to that, sort of, especially earlier in my career, before I kind of learned about the data and the kind of percentages of women in tech. Being the only woman in a whole company one time, I think there were 35 people, and I was the only woman in the company for a good 6 months. So that one, it did occur to me. This was maybe a bit extreme, but many jobs, 2 or 3 women out of 60 people wouldn't have been particularly unusual.
No.
And I didn't really give it that much thought in the early days of it. So what kind of impact do you think, though, it has subconsciously on people, for women who are finding themselves in that environment now?
I think because there's so much talk about the numbers and so much being done in this space, which wasn't happening when I was in those types of teams. There were no mentors, there were no women's groups, there was no activism around the diversity issues in tech. There was nothing like that. So for women now, for people now who are experiencing that, because we're more aware, we're told all the time about the numbers, and they fluctuate a little bit and go up and then they come back down again. Because we're more aware, it is obviously front and center for people working in teams like that. And I wonder how they are supported. And that's another reason why I do what I do, because I want people to understand that they're not alone. There are people they can turn to, and there are people working really hard behind the scenes to make the changes that we need to see happen.
And you mentor some people, I believe.
Yeah. Not as much as I would have done maybe 3 years ago. I think the lockdowns allowed me to do a lot more of that. But I have some mentees that I've had for a couple of years. Who just, we started and now it's become a constant thing. And I'm always trying to help them to, to do lots of things and to lift them. And yeah, it's great. I love it.
It's wonderful. And I'll move on to our next topic, which is about recognition for, all of these amazing things that you've been doing. And I think we can quite fairly describe you as a multiple award winner. You're on the Computer
And now.
Award-winning Nicola Martin. You've won the Computer Women, I will try that again, the Computer Weekly Top 100 Influential Women in Tech. In fact, it's 50, isn't it? I should
Number 23 I was last
Number 23, it's amazing. Yeah. And only last week you won the Every Woman Award for AI Champion, I believe, which is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I was really surprised. And just to tell everybody, I have this idea in my head that if you're sat in the back of the room in an award ceremony, you're not winning anything. And of course, when they called me, I had to do the long walk to the stage. And all I kept saying, if they'd had a camera on me, they would have been able to see me going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I was so shocked, but I'm able to get up there and get the words out was great, because I didn't actually plan a speech or anything. So note to self, I will, if I, get nominated again, practice a speech.
Well done. Yeah, speech ready next time. Well done for managing to say something.
I did shout out to BCSWomen as well.
Oh, fantastic. Nicola, what does it mean to you to win awards like this? It must be a big deal.
Not even the winning, just being mentioned is fantastic. Obviously, I can remember the first year when Computer Weekly one came up, and I was in Rising Stars that year.
Yeah.
And I could not believe it. I just kept shaking my head, because I kept thinking the list was of everyone who was nominated for both the main list and for the Rising Stars. I think it was over 500 even in 21 when I was first on the list.
It's a big list again.
Yeah. And it's just getting bigger and bigger each year. So, for me to be in that list and now to be in 23 in the top 50, it was absolutely mind-blowing to me. I still can't believe it. And I've even been recognized a few times when I went to the awards the other day. Yeah, I was, you mean me? You're not talking. you don't mean me. But they really were, and people were laughing at the fact I was so weirded out by being recognized. So yeah, it's nice. It's really nice to be recognized, but I am happy to do it mainly because it gives me the ability to do more of this. And I want to do more because people need to see more people like me, like them, so that they know, like I said on stage the other day, I want to see more of you being nominated so that you can be on this stage and receiving these awards and boosting your career, because you've got long careers ahead of you and you need that, support. You need to know that you're supported.
Absolutely. I think, visible role models who are succeeding makes such a huge difference to people's belief that they can do it. And I've always thought, there are trailblazers who manage it with nobody leading the way ahead of them, but actually to have that extra visibility of people, like yourself, just makes it all so much more pleasurable and more enjoyable and aspirational, that there's someone who I would love to be like.
And that EW award last week was the first time they've ever given the AI Champion Award. I'm still mind blown that I won that. If you want to, I've got it here.
Oh yes, you've got the actual award. Oh, it's
very heavy. Very heavy.
Somewhere very prominent and remembered.
Yeah. But I'm really happy to have had that, and it's just, I want more people winning these awards. I want more people who are doing the job every day, in the teams. I want engineers. I want people, really being nominated for these things. I want to see everyday people winning these awards. And I'm happy to see CEOs and stuff win them, but I want to see normal people who are doing the work in those companies and making those products winning those awards. We need to see more of that.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, sometimes the actual technical work of tech goes missing, doesn't it? And it's all about the leaders and the
prominent people who are willing to be, up in front of the cameras and everything. If it helps, I'm actually introvert, I think. And I spend a lot of time at home. There's a blanket behind me and cushions on the sofa. I spend a lot of time at home. And I very much need to do the whole social batteries thing. I need to recharge them. So I would be introvert, extrovert, I guess. But the thing I did last week, I had to build myself up for days to even leave the house to do the awards, because I was making excuses in my head not to go. I know that I need to do the prominence bit because it helps the wider community, but all of you should be thinking about, when you're doing your skills and training, those of you who are coming up, not just about the technical tools you can learn, but what other skills could I be learning now to give myself a bit of confidence? And just knowing about your own brand is really important, and being able to sell that to other people and market yourself is great.
Definitely. I think there's lots of people feel that getting that recognition is quite hard. How to get noticed.
How do you even start? Exactly. You could either get someone else to nominate you, but the forms are really long usually, or you can nominate yourself. You are the one who knows the most about you. Most of these competitions do actually accept self-nominations, and just understand you yourself, what you offer, what things you've done. Make sure you're doing the volunteering and doing the work, because they're not just going to give awards to you because you happen to be a software engineer, for example. They want to know what you are doing to help the community as well. So a lot of the work that you do will go towards being able to win these things, if that's what your push is, if that's what you want from it. I'm personally not doing any of this to win awards. I do the award stuff so that I can be the best representation and role model for all of you and everybody else that's coming up.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful aspiration for it, kind of recognizing that we can all be role models for each other, and actually sometimes having that visibility is a great way to kind of increase the impact. So yeah, shout out to every woman on the webinar who is listening. Take the step, put yourself forwards. It's great to have the recognition, but it's also great to be inspiring other people as well. And I am sure that you have stories that are inspirational.
It gives you such a boost as well, you know, and it allows you to meet lots of new people who are also in the lists that come up as well. If you don't feel like you could ever attend an event, you could potentially, you know, get nominated for a list. And, you know, that being on a list is actually brilliant, and it will open up your network like nothing else.
Yeah, connections are very,
Really
very valuable, very
Yeah.
important. So recognition isn't always about kind of the awards, though, is it? A question that I have for you, Nicola, is what's the best compliment you've ever received?
Oh.
Let's put you on the spot.
Trying to think. I don't know. That's the thing, isn't it? You don't, because I contracted for so many years, you didn't get compliments as such. And so I didn't get nominated for anything or anything like that. I did the work and I got paid, and that should have been, as far as people are concerned, I'm sure, reward enough. I think the compliment is when someone else nominates you for something and you find out about it. Like there was I can't remember the award. Hang on a second. Let me find it. Hang on a sec. I don't want to say the wrong thing. It was a changemaker list, diversin.com changemaker list.
Oh, changemaker.
And the names that were on this list, I couldn't believe it. And I thought somebody really liked me enough to put me forward for this. I was really humbled by that, to be honest. I just couldn't believe it. You know, and for Computer Weekly as well. And, you know, we've talked about that before in those lists, and we have talked in depth about it when I get into a rut and I start talking about them. But, you know, I do see that it's, you know, a really great compliment from people if I am put forward, and I am grateful.
So before we move to some audience questions, let's have some quick fire questions to finish off. So first question, after all of our chat this evening, I'm sure everyone feels like they know you pretty well by now. So tell us something that we might find unexpected about you.
Oh, okay. I have a black belt in Taekwondo.
Oh, okay. That is definitely unexpected.
I trained for years. I don't know quite if my hips would do it right now, but high kicks and stuff were no problem for me. Yeah, I used to train people as well. And at one point I was training for the UK Olympic squad as well.
UK Olympic squad. Wow. That is amazing. Goodness me.
And I gave it up to get married. So that was stupid. I know.
Wow.
Moved
Your
away.
Alternative reality. You could have
a different trajectory. And at one point I can tell you two things. And at one point when I was much younger, I could have been a TV presenter and very famous now. But I got offered a job on Nickelodeon. And when they had TV presenters and in the UK, and I wouldn't take it because they'd only give you 3-month contracts, and I was scared I wouldn't be able to pay my rent, so I said no, and went to an office.
Two quite amazing alternative reality possibilities there.
Yeah.
So my next question is, if you could have a coffee or your own choice of drink with somebody famous, who would you have it with and why?
To be honest, I don't really hold people on pedestals like that anymore. So I don't really have anyone famous. I meet so many brilliant people like you. It's enough. I don't need to meet, you know, A-list people and you know, have coffee with them. I'd much rather have coffee with normal people.
Oh,
I like finding out about people that I meet every day. I don't really have these desires to meet super famous people. They always let you down in the end. That's what I feel anyway. So, yeah.
And my final question, what's next for Nicola? What are your hopes for the future?
To do more of this. I love it. I love being able to speak to people, being able to maybe do more talks in schools and colleges and unis. I've started doing a few more recently. And just making sure that we are more active and bringing maybe groups together rather than working separately to try and, you know, make a difference. I love to see a lot of the groups, things that happen at BCS. And, you know, when we get involved in, you know, going to Downing Street or something like that, or working on different working groups to see what can be done to, you know, move the needle a little bit. And I want more of that. I want to be involved in more things like that. Maybe as a future role, one of the things I want to do is auditing around AI. So, you know, finish my exams for that, and that would be something I would like to add to the shopping list of skills I already have. So yeah, that would be good.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Nicola, what one last piece of guidance would you leave for our audience before we move to their questions?
I don't know how far along in your career you are, but if you have thought about taking a break and coming back, know that you can. You know, I've done that. I did a massive break, but for different reasons. For you know, for somebody who was ill, for a baby, I've done it for, and you know, you can come back from that. You know, the industry probably didn't support mothers returning, for example, but now you can. And also, you know, your network is really important. I don't get onto that Computer Weekly list from not having really good like networking ability, and you know, it is about you know, how you've networked and influenced and all of that. So, you know, build your network, and they can be your support system when things are not 100% great. And I never had that before. And since I've come into volunteering, actually, is where I've really, you know, built that. And then, you know, make sure that you're speaking to people, new people that you meet, whether that's at conferences and events. Make sure that you're doing that networking bit. It's really important.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. Thank you, Nicola. And it's all join me in a clap for Nicola. It's wonderful to hear, you know, all of your life experiences and your reflections, and just such well-deserved recognition that you've been gaining for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola.
Dalim's
come on to clap. So now it's time for audience questions, and we've already got some questions in the chat, but if you have questions, please type them in the chat. Dalim, are people able to come off mute, or do we need to go to questions that I read out?
If they raise their hand, we can unmute them.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you, David. So I will, oh, Dalim's on mute.
Just ask, give a name to David and he'll unmute them.
Okay, so for everyone who's typed questions, I'll read out your question, and then any new questions coming in, I will call on you to unmute. I think that's probably the simplest way, so no one's put on the spot unexpectedly. Okay, so our first question is from Seos or Seos. Apologies, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name correctly, but please correct me and let us know how you do pronounce it. So they ask, how valuable has a personal mentor been in your career journey? How did you find a good one?
Well, I had a mentor, as I mentioned, when I first started out, but you will be surprised once you get to a certain level how difficult it is to find a personal mentor. In fact, I've just done a leadership course not long ago, last year, and I was supposed to have a mentor from that, and they ghosted me. So, you
got ghosted by your mentor?
Yeah, I did. I got ghosted by my mentor. I would never do that to somebody, but I got ghosted by my mentor.
That's not mentally behavior.
I will not name them, but yeah, I did. And it's just more proof to me that when you get to a certain level as a woman in tech, you actually struggle to find people who can give you the advice, because there are so few women in like C-suite, for example. So it becomes harder to find people to mentor you. Earlier on, I could find people to mentor easily.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've always, I don't know, I guess kind of implicitly thought, but maybe only kind of consciously come to realize as I've gone through my career, is actually you can have quite a lot of mentors on different topics. You know, there's maybe not just kind of a mentor to have, but you can ask people for mentorship, you know, on lots of different fronts, and have many different mentors, you know, formal ones or informal ones.
Yeah, exactly. And I always encourage people who I have as mentees to have more than just me, because there are different things at different points in your career that you will need help with. And possibly that one person may have a network they can give you access to, or they, you could find somebody else who can help you. One of my mentees has more than one mentor.
Dalim, you came into picture and you vanished again.
Yes, I was going to ask you, Nicola, do you find that in IT it's more difficult to reach out and get mentors, or is it just the same as any other profession? And the same question to you, Joe.
I don't know about outside tech, but I mean, I do get people from outside tech who are coming into it or thinking about coming into it. And they say to me normally, I know you probably don't have time to speak to me, or I know I'm not in tech, so you probably don't want to help me. But I'm really curious and interested to talk to people from outside tech. So I don't mind. But I know that other people tend to have, may have problems finding people to help them. I don't know what you think, Joe.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think probably my own mentors have largely been people in tech, but my mentees have been both in tech and not in tech. And I think it is definitely valuable to have a mentor in whatever you're trying to strive to be. So, for example, if you're striving to be in a leadership role, maybe it doesn't have to be a tech leader, actually, who's your mentor, but somebody who can give you some guidance about, these are good kind of personal skills to be working on to really help you have, some confidence in your leadership and take that step. So I think that, maybe people in tech aren't necessarily so forthcoming always, but they're very, very happy to be asked. I would say that's where my mentors have come from, and I've not necessarily found that particularly a challenge.
Yeah.
So a slightly uncertain answer. But...
Could I add something? I think that we in IT in general are weak at marketing, communication, publicity. Could be much better. So my feeling is that maybe we should be forging these links and getting mentors from those professions to help us to present and communicate better. And that is absolutely no reflection on the conversation that's taking place in this Wominspiration situation, where I think you're communicating brilliantly. I do notice, however, that there is a hand.
Oh, we have a hand
Do
up.
you see it? Aisha. Oh, no. Gone. Sorry.
I think it was a thumbs up.
Yeah, okay.
I need to open more windows. I've only got the chat open. I take it that wasn't a question after all.
Theus, did you want to ask anything more, or confirm that your name is being pronounced correctly or not?
If you do want to be unmuted, then raise your hand, then we'll know. Otherwise, if you type your question, we'll assume that you want us to read it for you. Yeah, Joe, do you want to carry on with the written questions?
I will carry on. So our next question is from Holly, who asks, can you share any great practice from other organisations you volunteer for on how they work with and support volunteers?
I would actually say that we're the best.
Yay!
Yes, we're the best. You're really organized. Honestly, the different groups I work with are, different sizes and everything else. But in terms of the way that, I'm not just saying that, I'm genuinely mean it. I've worked with a few groups in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And, I always come back to this one because I feel like BCS is, well, we've got issues that we work on to fix them, but it's always, with a view that we take on what the membership think and try to roll that into any changes that are happening. So, yeah, I think it's probably the best group I work with. And I'm not saying that just because we are where we are. I genuinely mean that, genuinely. Sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear.
Hoping for some secret extra tips. So our next question is from Kaylee, who asks, how do you put yourself out there? How do you get on a list? Where do we go and how do we do that?
As I say, if someone's happy to nominate you, great. And you won't know about it until someone emails you and says, congratulations, you've made the shortlist, or the long list. And that then is when, the nerves set in and you're wondering who the hell has done that. But other than that, as I say, you can nominate yourself. Now, if you know someone, if you've got maybe colleagues who know you really well, that's always a good place to start. If your company actually supports the awards processes and things, you could actually get your company to nominate you. Try and connect with your company marketing team, and you'll be surprised. People just don't ask the questions, but usually marketing and people teams love this kind of prominence for their companies. So, it's almost free advertising. So yeah, just ask your companies whether or not they would support you and consider nominating you for awards.
What a brilliant suggestion. Yes, company marketing teams, I think they're going to be well placed to know how to put you forwards in the best possible way as well. So, yeah.
And just to Dalim's point earlier about getting in other groups from outside to help us to understand how to communicate, etc., and how to market ourselves. Actually would say that people from marketing backgrounds have done a lot of that in the last few years, and they have been in the awards processes on the finalist lists, because they are so great at talking about themselves and pushing themselves forward. And they obviously, cross over into tech. So they've been valid entrants for the competitions and they've been killing it, basically.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. And also people who are kind of big members of community or members of big communities, or, kind of prominent within a particular community. There's so many more people, I think, that can kind of support nomination as well.
Yeah.
It's another route that actually leads into our next question, also from Kaylee, which is any tips for networking?
There's a million and one different events going on. If you've got the time and the energy, you can do that. If you love taking photos, make sure that you're actively sharing your experiences at events, if people are happy to be in photos, obviously, on LinkedIn, or, if you're doing virtual events, share your experiences. One of the things we do on the CSWUN event is that there are so many different side events and parallel events happening, and people start to write about them on LinkedIn, for example, and their experiences of those events, and it gets traction, and then people hear about it. So, get into the habit, if you do want to network, of attending events, because you'll find you get more invites to attend things, and maybe you won't have to pay for them. You might get freebies, and it just helps you to build your network, and that's always a good thing. And it might feel really awful if you go to an event on your own to try and speak to people, but I force myself to say hello to people, and they're usually really grateful that you've come up to them. So yeah, you'll find somebody that you can talk to, and it will be fine.
Oh, that's great advice. And I loved what you were just sort of saying about, sharing on LinkedIn and kind of sharing your thoughts about it. I think there's definitely something, isn't there, in there about being brave and
and putting yourself out there. Yeah. And nothing is wrong. No, there's no mistakes that you can make, really. If you're talking about an event you went to, people are actually really grateful, because a lot of the time they can't go. So you talking about it means that next time it's run, you might get a free invite. They might be, considering going, and that just helps the community to keep going.
Absolutely. All right, our next question has possibly been answered already in this discussion. I will ask anyway, and there may be some more to say. How would you recommend people build confidence to self-nominate for awards and lists? And that's from Abigail.
So it probably helps if you've got a mentor, somebody who is like your hype person. I don't know. This is why I say, if you've got a marketing team at work, explain to them that you're considering putting yourself forward for an award. When I first was thinking about putting myself forward for things, I actually spoke to my team at work, and I had a really strong connection to them. In the end, what I started to do is, when I was going to speak at something, I would add it to a list, and we shared a list of all the things I was going to talk at. They knew, and they could help me by boosting posts and things like that. So it was really, you know, an almost symbiotic thing that was happening. But, you know, you can have that kind of relationship with them, or if you're able to, or if your organization is bigger, there will definitely be a network for that, and you can, you know, plug into it. Some good people to have a look at if you do look on LinkedIn. Non-member, but Asya Sharif, she's really prominent from NatWest, and NatWest really help with that kind of thing. Just as an example, and you will see her on awards nominations everywhere in the posts that go out and everything. Great people to follow, you know, just the people that you see prominently everywhere and posting about events or awards or about being thought leaders for the thing that they actually do, because that's important as well, and talking about the area that they work in, not just attending events and awards.
Brilliant, thank you. And our next question is also from Abigail, who is, how would you recommend people ask others to mentor them? I've never had one before, but I know I'm at a point where I'd benefit more than ever from one.
So my old view used to be, reach out to people who you admire or you think that you want to ask a question of, because mentorship doesn't have to be a year long, 2 years long. It could be one email with a question, and that could be quickly, you know, answered. It could be speed mentoring, which happens through groups like Coding Black Females. They do that. And, you know, it's being able to ask the question. But I was in another group or another meeting or something last year, and the group said, we don't approve of people, or we don't recommend that people reach out to people they meet on LinkedIn, or people they know on LinkedIn, or people they want to know on LinkedIn. And just because you might not get a response, or they might reject you or something, and that might make you feel bad about yourself. So I think it's whether or not you have the confidence to approach someone. They can only say no if they haven't got the time to do it. Hopefully they'd respond to you. Or if you know someone through somebody else who has been a mentor to them and they can recommend them, that's always a good place to start, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. You're kind of making me remember kind of early in my career, and I asked a colleague if they'd mentor me, and they kind of agreed and said yes. But kind of one of the bits that meant it never really happened very effectively was that I didn't really know what I wanted from a mentor. So I'd kind of add into that advice, actually, kind of know what you're asking them as well. Like, I want to make a step into a job a bit more like yours, or I'd like to become a bit more senior in what I'm doing. So kind of having some direction to it, I think, is really helpful. So you know what the request is. And that's, yeah, definitely reflection from experience when I failed to make any use from the mentor who agreed to mentor me and then didn't really, have the mentoring relationships that I'd hoped for. So I'll just throw that bit in there. So next question from Kaylee, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one myself. Are we okay to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Of course. I would be disappointed if you didn't. Yes.
Oh, and I see other people are sharing their connections. So yeah, please all connect with each other. Totally.
You'll need to grab them before this stops, or it will
save the chat. So that brings us to the end of the questions that are already in the chat. So would anybody like to ask a final question?
Okay, so may I ask a question or two?
You have the privileged position of being able to come on camera. So go right down.
Thank you. I have two questions there, and one observation, one question. I often sense that somebody is new in one of the audiences, the meetings that I'm to. So I try to speak to them and so on, and bring them in to the network. But many people are shy. Well, most of us are not forward. We're more shy. So if you are at a BCS meeting and you think, this looks interesting, or that sounds interesting, or whatever, just try and speak to the person concerned, or go and speak to one of the organizers of the meeting, of the group, and say, can you introduce me to a few people? Or can I ask you? Or just open up a dialogue, because we're all human. And in BCS, we have the wonderful situation of having not really just one-to-one contact with other members of the audience, but almost one-to-one. We don't have enormous meetings. So this is a super scenario to be in. So if somebody asks me, can I introduce them to people? Of course I will. But I don't want to impose on them and say, look, let's just everybody get talking. So there's that situation both ways. If you are brave enough to ask somebody to mentor you, then bingo. But if you're not, then just go to somebody who's one of the organizers of that seems to, and ask them, and they'll probably help you. And if mentoring is too big a word for you, then if there's somebody you want to talk to, or just say, can we keep in touch? Do you go in? Ask the old Cherry, do you come here often? Do you know other events? What do you think of them? Ones can you recommend? That sort of thing. BCS with its over 100 groups is wonderful for that. And BCSWomen is a wonderful community as well. But it doesn't have to be BCS. It's rival group BCS men, which I can see we're heading towards. Anybody should be able to talk to anyone by virtue of being at that meeting. That's one of my aims. I try to make sure people can communicate.
Absolutely.
But there's also, Dalim, there's also the CMN network as well. So if you're a BCS member and you need a mentor, you should be able to log in with your credentials and go to the CMN platform, and you should be able to sign up as a mentee looking for a mentor, and with it, whatever you put in as to what you're looking for, you should be matched with somebody, hopefully, if they're available, or else it will, the details are on there for when you do eventually get a match, and you can, start a dialogue with them.
Where do you find this CMN platform, Nicola?
Oh, is there anyone here from BCS who can give me the link?
Is it just, is it 3 letters, CMN?
Yeah, CMN, yeah.
Okay.
That's what it's called. Because I'm a mentor through that, but I'm too busy to do any work at the moment. But there is the ability to put yourself forward requesting a mentor. You say what it is that you're looking to be mentored in, and then so hopefully somebody will match, and you'll get back the matching people, and you can approach them, and hopefully they'll come back to you.
Great. And my other question is to most people in the audience. I've been hearing for about 25 or 30 years that we have a problem in IT because we only have 17% female. The rest presumably are, not female. Why is this?
Now.
Yeah. So why is this when you look out of the window and the population is 50% female? I feel that BCS is still a male-dominated organization. I don't know if that's what's putting off women, or is it that we've got it completely wrong? People join and participate in what they want to. So maybe only 17% of women want to participate in the sort of activities we do. What are your opinions? And this is to you two in particular, but to everyone else as well.
Gosh, that's a big question for 15 minutes.
Cheers to close off with. Oh dear, sorry.
Oh boy, I mean, I think that there are multiple reasons from all kinds of angles on that. We're, as women, socialized from young age to believe that this isn't the kind of career that women enter. There's all kinds of challenges that are specific to women once we enter it. But the 20% who are in the profession and who are members of BCS, probably not always the right people to ask that question to, because we love it, right? We're here because we do love tech and IT. So.
And let's be clear, not all of the 20% are members of BCS Women, of BCS. So there's an element of people just get on with their work and they don't interact with groups like ours. Or there's also the issue of, if people are contractors, they don't get included in the figures that get sent to like Tech Talent Charter, for example. They're not being included in the numbers, and there are probably a large number of people who contract in IT, especially in software testing and areas like that.
Anyone else in the audience want to volunteer a statement on this or an opinion?
There's some
Apparently
written
not.
opinions that they've written them down.
Oh, right. Do you see any?
We got some in the chat. I see lots of connection requests in the chat, so I'm very happy to see that, by the way. Everyone keep connecting.
All right.
Oh,
So
I
maybe we
have
should.
have a hand raised from Lela. Let's hear from Lela. Am I able to unmute?
There we go. I was just waiting to be unmuted. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lela. I'm quite a young BCS member. I just joined this year. I'm 19. I'm an undergraduate first year politics and international relations student, and I also work at IBM, where I lead global student outreach. So coming at this from both like a beneficiary perspective, as someone who is a young woman in tech, learning and upskilling and experiencing breaking into the industry as an early professional firsthand, but also as working across charities, working across industry to try and engage more women and young people in tech specifically. I think a huge part of the problem is around relatability. So as you mentioned, Dylan, like when you look around, yes, women are everywhere. We're 50% of the population. Women are interacting with technology just as much as men. But I think that there's a huge gap in terms of relevance and relatability and understanding where we as women belong in the industry. When you ask young girls, I think it's only 1 in 10 can name a woman in STEM role model or industry like examples. So young girls don't see themselves as belonging in the industry, and this is something so important that I know the BCS, but also the charities STEMETTES, so STEMETTES, are doing a lot of work on. I sit on that charities youth board, and we've just produced a white paper around how we can gain role models for A-level and GCSE students to be in women in STEM role models to be in the GCSE and A-level STEM curriculum, because currently they're not included in those textbooks. So there's this huge thing of, yes, for me, in my case, I was proactive, I was motivated, I taught myself to code, but I was one of very few. Everyone else was so demotivated and didn't see themselves as belonging in the industry. If you told them, you can be an artist in tech, you can change the world and do social good with tech, you can do whatever. I think it's this idea of showing people how they can use tech to enhance and not replace their livelihoods and hobbies. They think they just have to be a computer scientist because there's a lack of visibility and awareness as to the many careers that exist within the industry. So I think that that's a huge thing. It's a need for like kind of greater PR, for a marketing campaign, for some kind of way to make tech really seem attractive, and for young women and girls to see themselves as belonging in the industry. Because currently you look around and young girls can't name women in STEM, and then once they get into the industry, it's how we then foster that sense of belonging. And we're not just talking about diversity and making sure we're ticking the box and closing the gender gap, but rather we're promoting inclusion and equity of opportunity as well. So that's my thoughts.
No, Lela, you're absolutely right. And I would add to that we see lots of boot camps to learn to code. So for example, you said you code, but we actually need to acknowledge that there are other skill sets that are required within tech, not just being, a programmer, a developer, software engineer, whatever you want to call the role, that there are other roles as well. So we need to see more groups that are focused on other skills. So like at the moment, Women in Data, for example, is a really good example of a group that's sprung up, and it's building up really quickly. They've just had their big conference, which I didn't get a ticket to.
Oh.
I hope to get one next year. But these are the groups that we need to. I think part of the turn off, if you like, is the thought that that's all you can do. And we need to let people know there are other roles that they can do, and their mindset, their way of thinking might actually be suited to other roles, and we need to encourage more role models in very different roles to come up and be prominent as well, and help them to do that.
I think there's a real thing, isn't there, around kind of the purpose of the tech as well, which both sort of touched on with what you said. It's not just about the tech bit of it, it's about why we do it, and that really matters. I mean, I know in my career I still consider myself a techie, because I use data as kind of the basis for everything I do, but what I'm providing is like diversity and inclusion advice. And actually I met a truly amazing woman who I would love to invite to Wominspiration one day, if she would be interested, who introduced herself as working on the war in Sudan. And then I found out later that she's actually a cybersecurity expert, and her contribution is through the cybersecurity that she's working with kind of the UN. So amazing, and actually it's not always about the tech, the tech focus. It can be about, what we're trying to achieve for society, for sustainability, for the world, as well as, about the enjoyment of the tech itself.
Well, those are indeed very relevant thoughts. And I think we're all enablers in one way. We're trying to move ourselves to good for society, aren't we? And this session has been really inspirational. You've really ticked the box as far as what it says on the tin is concerned. You two are both inspirational, and I'm just waiting for you, Joe, to suggest that you might be the subject of a Wominspiration event.
Oh, thank you. You might need another interviewer.
I think we can find another interview. That's great. I would like to thank you, and also to everybody else on the call. I hope you've enjoyed it if you're in the audience, as it were, but haven't said anything. I hope you've got some benefit. I know and we will continue to have Wominspiration events to try to encourage the discussion, encourage the networking, move us all forward. But Nicola, you've been really inspirational, and also the revelations about how you've overcome challenges, and boy, oh boy, what challenges. That really is something. Well done. Keep going with your son, and let's all get to being proud of where we are, what we're doing, and the people around. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.